Hello and welcome to another episode in the Conversation series. I'll introduce our guest in a moment. My name is Alex. I'm co-chair of the Council of Christians and Jews, and we're here in Melbourne on the lands of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Our guest is Mike Service, OAM. We'll talk about what you currently do in a minute, but let's begin by telling us a little bit about your background, how you grew up, and specifically if religion had any play in the way you grew up and in your childhood.
Okay. Well, it's great to be with you, Alex. I enjoy this opportunity. So my name is Michael Zervos, but my family background is Greek. So I was actually christened in the Greek Orthodox Church, but I was born in Melbourne. But my family has been here for many generations. In fact, my grandfather, Michael Mangos, arrived in Australia in 1909. So I'm third generation, but proud of my Greek heritage. So I'm a Christian, and my professional background is as an accountant. My career has been in two parts. One is in the corporate scene, but the last 25 years in leadership roles in the not-for-profit sector. And so that's what brings me to being working for a charity.
So we'll come back to that in a minute. As we say, you work for Courage to Care. We'll come to that in a minute. But as you said, you've worked in leadership in what we now call for-purpose organisations.
Yes.
They used to be called not-for-profit organisations. I've got a list here: Make-A-Wish, Alana Madeline Foundation, Guide Dogs, and probably a few others as well. So where do you think that drive comes from, considering that you were a corporate accountant?
Sure.
Where do you think that drive comes from to working for purpose organisations?
It's a good question, and it's quite a strong one for me, because what I've been blessed is to be able to align my personal values with those organisations, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Alana Madeline, which was heavily involved in education, cyber safety space, Guide Dogs Victoria, now Courage to Care, which we'll talk about. So those values very much align with me as a person. So the person I am and the employee I am are one in the same. So I'm really delighted to be able to align my personal values with what I do in the workplace.
Can you tell us more a bit about those values?
Yeah, sure. I think that, it might sound a bit obvious and things, but just the honesty, the decency, that what I do during the day actually feels like I'm proud of it and has purpose. Whether it's education related or whatever it might be, rather than just doing something in the accounting world which was just for profit or for the next meeting and the like. I found being able to, the efforts and the work I might do might still be the same in the nature of what I need to do. For example, I'm doing board papers now for the board meeting. Those things are still important, but the end result is a mission-driven activity, as you call it, for purpose. The purpose might be greater education, it might be whatever shape and form it might be. So it's not just to generate money for the sake of it or have an efficient organisation for the sake of it, is actually to do some good. So that very much aligns with me as a person. So I can proudly say to my family and anyone, this is what I do for a living and this is who I am. So I'm really quite blessed, actually.
Well, I'm not sure everyone can say that, so I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's lovely to hear. So coming back to the organisation you're with now, it's called Courage to Care. It started in the Jewish community, but it's gone broader. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I'll tell it in the way I tell how I've got involved. I was approached 6 years ago to be involved with an organisation which is legally called B'nai B'rith Courage to Care Victoria. And I didn't know what B'nai B'rith was, but I soon learned that it's a global Jewish service organisation. And when I do some talks, I say it's actually older than Rotary. So it's been around a long time. And the reason the Jewish organisation B'nai B'rith created Courage to Care was so the learnings from the Holocaust would not be lost. And by that I mean this isn't a history lesson so much, but it's about human behaviour. A lot of people stood by and did nothing. You and I would know them as bystanders, but there was a significant number of people who have been recognised as righteous among the nations, but we like to call them upstanders. So what we now do is we point at examples through history of people who have had the moral courage and the courage to care, which is our name, to actually take positive action. So what we do now, and what we've done and what we've evolved into, is an education organisation that is all about saying, well, don't be a bystander, because who are you really supporting if you're a bystander? Whose behaviour are you supporting? But what could you do? And each of us in our own way can actually make a positive difference. We're not suggesting anyone puts themselves in danger. We're not about politics, we're not about advocacy. We're about, well, if you see something which you think is inappropriate, what could you do? And so we encourage...
And as part of that, you focus on some some upstanders through history, not just people through the Holocaust, but also even in our own community, Indigenous people and others. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Certainly. Well, I'm proud to say that we talk about William Cooper, and his grandson, Uncle Boydie, is our patron. So William Cooper is...
Many in the Council of Christians and Jews would know who that is.
Well, that's right. So, and we cite that as an example of someone who did take a positive action, and there's lots of examples that we can use from contemporary society about people who have taken positive action, but we make the point, not putting yourself in personal danger. It's just considering what you could do, but the act of standing by and doing nothing is the thing that we challenge, and we leave mainly students, but we're doing work with adults in the workplace as well. But this year alone, we're aiming to reach 20,000 Victorian students. That's face to face and all over Victoria too.
Wow.
So half of what we do is in regional and rural Victoria. So we'll go to those schools, and our volunteers will go to those schools, and we'll talk about history because we want to learn from history. But we'll also talk about behaviour to go, what could you do if you see something in the schoolyard? Rather than do nothing, what could you do? We're not suggesting you jump in the middle of a fight. Could you tell a teacher? Could you comfort the victim? Could you just say, hey, we don't talk like that here, or could you challenge it? What could you do to be an upstander? So the concept of being as an upstander underpins what Courage to Care now teaches.
So as part of that, with current wars going on around the world, has any of your work changed in what you do?
Sure.
Or does that not? I mean, that's part of what you do anyway, so does the conflicts in the world make a difference?
Sure. Well, like any decent person, it saddens us, but we make the point quite loudly, we are not a political organisation. We're not about advocacy, and frankly, we can't affect what's happening in other parts of the world. What we can affect is our own behaviour. And I quite colourfully say I can affect what happens in Glen Hutley Road or Glenferrie Road or Mildura or Malvern or whatever. So what can we do about our own behaviours here? One thing we're very big on is free speech, but we're very anti-hate speech. We really want anyone who may be chanting a slogan or making a statement, stop and think about what you are saying. Stop and research, what does that really mean? Don't just parrot it. And even when we go into schools, we have this thing called a pyramid of hate, and it begins with inappropriate language and inappropriate behaviour. It doesn't begin with physical violence and bombs and the like. It begins with that inappropriate language which isn't called out. So we're very much about teaching students and adults. It's not just a joke. And if you hear something or do something, consider how you can challenge that. If we stand by it, we are really supporting that behaviour, and so we take that view. So we're all about that education piece, and we're all about what we can do, Alex, in our own environment, not what we can do in global sense. But we have that accountability and responsibility we're responsible for our own behaviours and actions in Victoria, in our own backyards.
Lovely. And to finish up on something a little bit out left field, you've become, since you've been in this role, even though, as you say, this is beyond the Jewish community, you've become an honorary Jew. And I'm glad you're laughing at that, because we take that proudly as a member of our honorary Jewish community. As a result, you've been in probably more synagogues than most non-Jews. What do you think you've learnt out of that experience, having been, and not, as you say, growing up as a Christian, but now working for a nominally Jewish organisation?
What I've learned, and that's an honour to be called an honorary Jew, what I've learned is the Jewish community is just like everybody else, including me. And my Greek heritage resonates, the sense of family, the sense of wanting a better world for our children, the sense of caring for each other, the sense of heroes and villains within it. I tell a joke, and I hope this is not too bad, but I used to say about my Greek heritage when my mother would be saying we're going to a family event, I'd say, that's wonderful, Mum. Who aren't we speaking to this month? And I bet there's going to be food there. So I say that jokingly, but in all seriousness, the Jewish community is part of our Victorian community. And when people say, well, you're an advocate for anti-Semitism, and I go, well, what wouldn't I be? As I am against any form of hate speech, any form of racism. So these are Victorians interacting with other Victorians, and so I'm really honoured to be part of the Jewish community, and frankly, it's a community that's contributed so much to our society. So why wouldn't I? As I am with all other communities. So I'm honoured to be an honorary Jew.
Well, thank you very much, and we're honoured to have you. Honoured to have you, importantly, doing this job in this role at this time, which I think is more important now than almost that it's ever been. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being part of our community, and thank you for this conversation.
My pleasure, and I wish you well.
Thank you very much.